welcome to my channel. Well, this one's going to be about buying knives on a budget. Now, if you're not on a budget or you don't have a knife budget, then you don't need to watch this one. But for most of us, um, we have some kind of discretionary amount of money that we can spend on knives, either per week or per month or however you schedule it. But a certain amount of money over a certain amount of time is all you're allowed to spend on knives, because everything else has to go to things that are non-discretionary, like housing, food, vehicle maintenance, and gas and stuff like that. So those other things that had affected your knife budget before are getting squeezed. It's getting squeezed. Most people's knife budget, if you're like anybody, like most normal people, the amount of money that you've got available to spend on knives just keeps going down due to inflation, for one thing. Now, knife companies I think we're living in a golden age of the knife world. We're going to look back at this time and say, wow, can you imagine when knives were that cheap or, inexpensive, and you could still get a good quality knife? I'm no futurist. I don't know the financial future of everything, but globally, a lot of the economies everywhere are crashing. Something's going to happen, and a lot of the manufacturing, for whatever reason, is going away from China. They can't be depended on. There's a lot of reasons: shipping, the way they control their population. Everything was fine when they were manufacturing, but when they start cracking down and stuff and preventing people from going to factories, it affects shipping of the product. So even if you got something inexpensive, if you can't get it, you can't sell it. So if it can't get here. So I think it's good that manufacturing is coming back to the United States. But in the meantime, as your budget is getting squeezed down, there are other alternatives. Like if you look at these two knives right here, they look similar. Well, this is a GEC and this is a Rough Rider. Right away, you're going to save a lot of money. But just looking at it, just the average person just looking at a knife, other than the jigging pattern, they're going to look, and the size, they're going to look pretty much similar. You can trick your brain to think that too. Like you want it. Maybe you have a fascination with GEC and you want to collect them, but it's just getting too expensive, and you can't flip them fast enough or whatever. I don't do that. I usually get knives and keep them. The only way I get rid of them is by giving them away. But there are other alternatives. For example, like if you are into flipper knives and stuff like that, and I know this is an old version and everything, but Civivi Elementum. If you are just getting into knives, you still get, with the K-Bar Dozier, you still get the same blade shape, basically, as an Elementum. You don't have the flipper thing, so yeah, it's not as fast. Not once has it made a big difference between the speed between this and that. Excuse me. Between the opening times. The main thing is one-handed opening. To me, one-handed opening, and it's a locking knife. Yeah, this is more fun to play around with and fidget if you like doing that. But this will open with one hand, and you kind of fidget. When they break in, you can get them to where they shake down pretty well and will close and everything. I haven't been using this one as much, but it is a very good alternative. These are usually, this one was $80 or $85 when I got it, but that's because it has S35 in it. They normally go for like $50. These normally go for around 20 something. This one has D2 in it. I got it on sale when it was 20 something. Blade HQ had it on sale. Now that's another thing. There's, you know, a lot of people tell you don't. Oh, sorry, bumping this. A lot of people tell you don't worry about, you know, like fear of missing out. Don't let that get you. But with inflation, you know, if inflation just keeps going up, you don't, like, inflation is like 8 or 10% on something. You don't get 8 or 10% raise that month, which you won't. Then you're losing money if you purchase something right away. But don't let that influence you like you've got to do it or it's going to go away. But I mean, the longer you wait, the less your money is worth. You know, tangible assets don't lose their value in high inflation. They basically, the price, you know, the cost of them go up. Another area you can look into is antique knives, or vintage knives, is you're still getting something that's interesting and not just like cookie cutter everything you always see. You've seen one rat, two, you've seen them all, you know, something like that. That's a rat one. You know, you can look through that, and that adds another level to it, because sometimes you got to bid if you're on eBay, or you've got to search around. So it's not just as easy as going into a catalog, look and see if they got it in stock, bam, ordering it. You don't haggle with the price or anything like that. So that adds a little bit more time before you purchase your stuff. It's like, it it allows your money before you spend it, you know, to go a little bit longer. Now you got to watch out on bidding too, because you can think that this knife is like huge. You can think that this knife is this size, depending on the photograph. You know, you have to really be cautious on stuff like that. Same thing like with the clasp knife. You know, you may want one of these case buffalo knives, but I mean, even in a used condition and stuff, you're going to pay at least $100 for one of these. Whereas you could still get a clasp knife for marbles, and yeah, they got this etching on it in this particular series, but it's only like $25, and they're very similar as far as like feel and look. Now the steel's gonna be different, the build and everything else, but is it that important to you? You know, to have. And this is again, what's your philosophy in collecting? Are you collecting for an investment, or you have you have an aversion against Chinese knives? Okay, well then you're just gonna have to go with the used market then. You know, you are setting these limitations upon yourself. So if you're having a problem with your budget, and you've always had these things etched in stone, you might want to reconsider it if you want to save money. If not, hey, that's entirely up to you. I'm not trying to convert you into something. Another thing you can do is take, like, you know, very inexpensive knife and experiment with it. Like these particular Imperial ones, you don't even have to learn how to do pins and everything, because were just simulated pins on some of these. You have to look in and at the inner liner here, and if you see no pins, but you see pins on the cover, then it's glued on, and the small one was. But now it's something unique, and I learned a lot about. Oh man, did I learn a lot? What not to do. I learned a lot about what not to do on these. So yeah, just like this, you know, this Buck 110 Auto. Maybe you can settle for just a Buck 110 regular, you know, and an Auto will be your grail, and eventually you'll get it. Of course, the price will. Now, as far as knife prices, what I'm thinking is happening is, because of the problem we had, I don't even mention it, you know, censorship and everything. Because of the problem we had, shipping and everything was held up. and there wasn't a lot of inventory available. Then all of a sudden, too much was available, and they didn't have enough warehouse space, and they got too much stock and all this other stuff. So they got to get rid of the old stuff. So right now, you're finding a lot of sales, but I don't think that's going to last forever. And once those sales dry up, then you're going to see progressively higher prices on knives. I've already seen it starting to creep up on the newer Rough Rider models. Yes, they're increasing their steel, and they're using stuff a little bit different, but still the prices are going up everywhere on everything. So um, you can go as low as an inexpensive Barlow, just to get your knife fix. Cost you $5-10 at most. Yeah, don't even look at this back spring here. If that bothers you, get a file out or some sandpaper, and you close it, of course. But do that for a while and make an inexpensive knife perfect in your eyes. Make it GEC quality if you can. You're not going to be able to because of the materials, but still, these are pretty good value. They're for what you get. But those are just some options. Like I said, you don't have to do that. If you've got a fear or aversion of Chinese knives, well, you can also go with cold steel. Taiwan is still not officially 100% China, but even though this one lists the steel as China, which is kind of strange. Maybe they're trying to be. Used to be put Taiwan on it. I just noticed that. Maybe they're trying to be politically correct, because our official stance is Taiwan is officially part of China. But the Taiwanese say, no way. So, they're not ruled by the Communist Party yet. Anyway, cold steel's always been a good value on stuff like that. You can get Joker made knives. They're made in Spain, so I'm sure some people got political issues with Spain too. But those are just different options for you, just things that you consider. Like I said, the Rough Riders are still going to be a good value for you. Like if you can't afford a buck or a $1.10, then you can get a Marbles or an Old Timer. They're going to give you pretty much, I think this is the 5, no, it's a 6. They're going to give you pretty much the same thing as a buck. Same with a Rough Rider. You're going to get a locking blade. Steel's not going to be quite as good, but yeah, it's all what you find important. If a super steel is really important to you, then you may not want to go below a certain standard. You could still find very good knives that meet your parameters, but changing times require adapting. So if you're not willing to flex and you're not willing to change, then that's on you. You can't sit there and say, well, the price of GEC keeps going up, and I just don't know if I'll be able to afford any knives anymore. No, you're not going to be able to afford any GEC knives anymore, maybe. But, yeah, there are knives available that are this long, like a medium toothpick, that cost way less. I don't have a case version of it, but a case would probably be like 50 or 60 bucks. So you cut your price right in half right there, at least. I think I paid like over 100 for this one when I got it. This was actually available at dealers. They would actually put them out, and people would buy them like crazy, and they'd be in stock for over a month. There wouldn't be any like it hits the market, and then 1 minute later they're all sold out. None of that was going on with this one. or with the 97 pattern GEC I got. After that, they started going crazy, and I said, forget it. There are other knives out there. I like GEC, but I'm not going to play that game. I'm not going to get on a special mailing list and go in forums and talk to people and schmooze around and beg and no, sorry. I mean, if you like to do that, that's fine, but it's not for me. Obviously, it's not for me. I like GECs, but there are other things like Schatt and Morgans and old Queen knives and stuff like that. And Queen right now they're saying is going to be starting to come back to the United States, so I applaud that. Same way with Uncle Henry and Old Timer. A lot of those are starting to be made in the United States again. So those of you that object to knives for patriotic reasons or whatever, boom, you've got your other alternatives. Although you're going to pay more money for it because American knife makers have to pay at least a minimum wage. They're not subsidized by their government usually, and they have to abide by regulations, OSHA and all this different other kind of regulations. So, yeah, it's different. It's different here. We're not playing on the same playing field. You know, it's like one side's playing football or basketball with a certain set of rules, and the other one's got completely different rules, which make it they don't have to follow the rules. You have to follow your rules. They don't have to follow any rules. It's not fair. It turns out to be not fair. Not much we can do about that. You know, like I said, if you've got an issue with Chinese knives, you can buy American or other company brand, versions of knives and get by. But you're not going to change the people that will still buy Chinese knives. You're not going to stop them. They're going to buy whatever they want to buy, and you're just going to have to learn to live with that. And you can't talk budget without talking Ganzos or Ganzos. Most of the models were like $25 or less. They're usually in 440C. This is the FB763 and 440C. It kind of reminds me of a 940 Benchmade. Now, this is $25 and a Benchmade's over 100. It's like 100 and something. Almost 200. I like this little stubby one. I call it the Rhino nose, the Rhino, because all I did was take that secondary edge off and made it curved here a little bit. But it was originally kind of a Tonto Persian trailing point. Who knows? Cool little knife. I used it a lot for... These are work knives. These are type knives you'll take out. It's the FH61 and D2. You'll take out and use. Now this one's like a Rat 2, but with an axis lock. So it has a kind of like the Rat 2 shape. Hand model violation. Let's see what number it is. This is the FB727S, so it's a small one in 440C. But great action on it. You know, it just falls shut, opens easily. Nice thin, slicey blade. Great ergos. And inexpensive. This guy's a little bit beefier. This one got me. Because this blade is so fall shutty, it's thicker. I did this one time, and man, that thing came down and got, I think it was this finger. It got me right away. So, you better make sure your fingers are all the way out of the way when you pull back on this thing, because, man, chink, it comes right. It's almost like assisted closed. Instead of assisted open, it's like assisted closed. It's got a good chunk to it when it comes down, but there's an extra, that spring pull, you know. that axis lock type of stuff. It's a good clean mechanism, you know. If you keep your fingers out of the blade path, like people are saying axis locks are safe because your finger's not in the path. Well, sometimes if you're dumb like me, you'll get your fingers in the path. But that's another one. This is pretty cool. I'd always wanted a Spyderco Capara type of, I like that kind of like leaf, kind of like long leafy blade shape. And I got this one, which is the FH71 in D2. And yeah, it's not exactly the Spyderco, but it's got that same shape. It's a lot less money. Now, CJRB used to be the inexpensive line. I believe it was Artisan. But now what have they got? They've got something even less than that. What is it? A lower line than that. I mean less, but a less expensive line. Just like if your main knife manufacturer that you like doesn't have something, they'll usually have a lesser brand. Like Spyderco has their Bird brand that's made in China, and it uses 8CR13 MOV instead of, like SV30 and stuff like that. But they're less expensive. They're still, the same brand. And there's Sincut and all kinds of ones out there. But this is a pretty cool one. Dylan Mallory. It's the J1905. I think it's got, what was it called? The Actus or something like that. Kind of a long, thin handle and a long, stabby kind of a blade. It's liner lock. All right, this was one of my favorite, man. You pick this one up and you would go, wow. Is this really? I know I added a little bit more to the choil here and make it a finger choil. But you would go, this just feels a lot, FH41 feels a lot better quality than what you would expect from a knife like this. Just a good action and everything. They come in carbon fiber, and they're not a whole lot more. This is a carbon fiber laminate. It's not a whole carbon fiber type knife, but this one is the FH11 in D2. So a lot of times they're clones, because like this is like I think a clone of a ProTech, but it's another nice blade shape, axis lock, carbon fiber, fall shitty little action and everything. I think it's got like a 3-inch blade on this one. They make a bigger one. I've been meaning to get, but I never get around to. You know how that is. F735M in 440C. Just want to make sure. Yeah. F753M. 753M. But yeah. It's nice. Now, these are slick feeling. Whenever you see these carbon fiber laminates, they're slick. They're slicker than even G10 and stuff. All right, before we get to that one, this is another one of my favorites. A little harpoon shape there. It's got jimping down here for those that like, need jimping, and then smooth here for your harpoon effect. If you don't want to deal with the jimping and you want smoothness, it's up there. Fits a hand real well. And this is the FH51, FH51 in D2. Got to catch it just right in the light there to see that. Yeah. And then this one is a switchblade version. G721 and 440C. These Toby got for me. I think he ordered this one directly from China, because I haven't ever seen them offered here in USA, you know, with them functioning like this. Because I know with Boker on the Kalashnikovs, they import them without the spring in it, and then they add the spring later. This one came, I think it came directly from China. It wasn't, it had no intermediate stops. But that's another cool one. So there you go. There's your Gonzo. This is just another example of another brand. I got into Gonzos before I got into Rough Riders. So while I was getting into all these, I pretty much was getting on the burnout. You know, I started going on higher value knives. You know, Spyderco and stuff like that. But just because you start off on something doesn't mean you can they're not good anymore, or just because the design is older, like it's about 5 or 10 years old or whatever, it's still a good knife. It'll still put in some good work for you, and you won't worry about if you drop it or lose it or it gets stolen. You're not going to be going like, oh man. Whereas if it was a $250 knife as opposed to a $25 knife, yeah, you're gonna baby that sucker. I don't care who you are, you're gonna baby that more expensive knife, because these things exist. These knives exist to do the work, to do the dirty work. They're the ones that like to get down and do the dirty work. The other ones, you know, just naturally you just want to protect them a little bit because they cost so much money. Well, my thought is, I've really only got like one knife that I treat like a safe queen, and that's that black handled case Bowie knife, because I have a white handled one. But that black handled one, I'm not going to sharpen it. I'll clean it and everything, but I'm leaving it right where it is, because there's no need to. There's no need to even just carry it. I pick it up every once in a while, you know, hold it. But I mean, yeah, it's too valuable to go out and just, you know, just randomly carry it around. Like I said, also, I have that white handled one, which I have sharpened, and I have thrown in the dirt and stuff before. That still looks good, and I still like to carry that one. So, and if I don't want to carry that, if I think that's too, you know, risky, if I really want to get out and go crazy or something, I'll break out even a Pakistani Bowie knife, you know, that they don't cost that much. Now you've got to be careful with some of those, because some they even the tang is so soft. You go to hit something hard with it, you're going to want to chop with a Bowie knife, and like a big one. And if you go to chop something solid like a good piece of oak, and then all of a sudden your handle starts looking like a banana, you're not going to be happy with that. But that hasn't happened to me, but there are those out there, so just be aware of that. The farther down you go with a budget knife and everything, the more likely you're going to run into a chance of running into quality control issues or heat treat issues, stuff like that. And usually the more reputable manufacturers you get, even with their budget brand, things are going to be good still with the heat treat and the steel. You can pretty much count on that because their reputation is dependent on it. But these off-the-wall ones, Gonzo's not really off the wall, but I'm just talking about some of the, you know, ones that maybe you've never heard of before. Those are pretty bad. Anyway, just be careful out there, and you don't have to give up on knives just because your budget is cut back. You may have to change the type of knives you're buying, but there's still plenty of inexpensive, good knives out there available. So consider that. Anyways, thank you for watching, and have a nice day.